Hi, everybody. Really, as always, such an honor to be part of this community. Um, um, you know, More and more, I feel like the goal of my practice is shlemut, wholeness. This is an idea that we find in different Jewish sources from different orientations, and it looks differently depending on where you're coming at it from. But I find it to be a really helpful way of thinking about what I'm doing with my spiritual life. And in a time like right now, it's even more important because when I look at my situation and when I think about, what might my mindfulness practice be, what might my spiritual practice, my religious practice, and even beyond that, what are all the things that I'm doing with my life right now? Um, how might those things be different based on our moment in time being different? Um, I remember as an undergraduate in an ecology course, one of the professors, just as a kind of a statement of fact, said, environments, ecosystems are always changing. That is the only constant. It's always changing. And behavior needs to either adapt or an organism will die if it's not adapted to that ever-changing environment. And so we too are in this moment in time, and this is actually always true. It's just more dramatic right now, but we're in a moment of time right now in which there's a lot of challenging, scary, painful, I want to underline scary. Again, I'll say it twice. Things happening that call upon a different way of manifesting. And when I reflect upon, bigadol in a big way, a practice of shlemut, part of what I notice as a pitfall in my own practice is that I fall into a pattern of thinking, assuming that the goal is to kind of have this whole sense of being a human being at all times, kind of perfectly, meaning, like I'm doing everything in balance all at once. And I actually think that is an obstacle to nurturing ways of being in the world that are more adaptive, meaning that they help us right now. There's a great phrase that Rambam uses, quoting the prophets, where he just talks about, look at, this is in Hilchot Tshuva, talking about the shofar. Look at your life. Are the things you're doing actually helping you? Or is it velo yatzilu? It doesn't help you. It doesn't save you. So what is actually helpful right now in balancing us out for this moment? And perhaps instead of thinking about it as like, I'm always trying to be in this place of balance, if we notice that a significant amount of our time and heart energy and mental space is inclined in a certain direction, this may be it may be very important in our spiritual practice to be actively cultivating the balance to that orientation. So this week we're in Parshat Vayera, and one of the I loved yesterday. Zach was like, "Oh, there's so many great hits in this parsha." Totally true. There are so many great hits, but I want to zoom in on one of those, which is the moment in which our sages understood Avraham as establishing our morning prayers. It says after stuff goes down in Sodom, in Sodom, Avraham, it says next morning, Vayashkem Avraham baboker. He gets up early and he rushes to the place of perspective where he can look upon the city and see what happened. And the sages in the Talmud identify that moment as kind of the prototype, the paradigm of our morning prayers. And it has this energy of like, I'm getting up and I'm going. I'm acting. I'm witnessing what has happened. I'm making myself ready to respond. Right. One of the other beautiful pieces from earlier in the Parsha, Avraham, right, even in a time of pain, he gets up and responds to these strangers wandering by. And indeed, our tradition, and I'm especially thinking about the Sfat Emet, great memories of learning Sfat Emet with you, Josh, at camp. But the Sfat Emet says, what was Avraham doing? Like, what was his mission? He was bringing love throughout the world. Like, that's why he had to leave home. He had to go into the exile and to bring love. And so when Avraham gets up and runs to the place to witness, what has happened? How can I respond? How can I bring love into this situation? Like, that is the paradigm of not only our morning prayers, but I think a kind of emotional and spiritual energy that I feel like I want to generate right now, but I actually feel like it's very hard to. There was an initial energy that came after October 7th, and now it's like, how do we sustain this? And like me, you may be feeling the weight of having held this for weeks, on top of all the other difficult things about being a human being that we all are dealing with all the time. So we may feel like, okay, I want to be in this world and actively and energetically bringing love into this situation, to witness, to be present, to respond with love and kindness. But maybe that's really hard to actually connect with right now. Additionally, even just sustaining our kind of baseline wellness and a sense of being okayness, like even that may feel especially challenging right now. And so what I'd like to invite us to do with our practice today is to really give ourselves abundant measures of permission to enter into a quality of being in time, in our bodies, with our minds, in a really different way that acts as a balance to that other side of like energetically trying to respond and do. And drawing from another teaching from the Sfat Emet, who offers an idea from a couple weeks ago of Parshat Noach, that Shabbat, when we come into Shabbat, it's like going into Noah's Ark. And even the name Noach in Hebrew, Nun Chet, that root means to rest. And he says that every Shabbat is like an ark. And when you go into that ark, you have space to reconnect with chayut, with the kind of life force. And then the stay in the ark is always temporary. So we don't go into the ark thinking we're going to be in the ark forever, but rather we know that, okay, I'm going to go into the ark and I'm going to recharge. And then on the other side, I'm going to come out and I'm going to be better equipped to respond to the needs of this life and this world and the people around me. So I'd like to propose that this period of practice that we're going to go into now, to be seen in that way of like, we're going into an ark. And in the ark, an ark has no means of steering. It has no means of propulsion. It's not going anywhere. You can't make it go anywhere. You can't try to avoid something. It just floats. But the idea is that it feels incredibly safe. And it feels like a refuge in which life can thrive. And so in a few moments, I'm going to ring a bell. And then my invitation is to see if we could be in time as if we're in an ark. And I said earlier, it requires abundant amounts of permission, because I know for myself, as soon as I get into that ark, especially in a moment like this, I say to myself, like, you can't go in the ark. There are too many things to do. There are too many things to worry about. It, there's like so much stuff that comes up. This isn't time for going into the ark. But then we remember, we are not going into this ark forever. It's like 15 minutes. 15 minutes. We're going to go into this ark and see if we can allow for the possibility of inhabiting a space in which we feel safe. Even with all the stuff going on outside that ark, turbulent seas, we feel safe. We can breathe deeply. When the voices come in that say, you can't be here, you got to worry about this. And what about that thing you just read about? That horror. We gently, lovingly say, I'm going to return to you, friend. I hear you, and I'm going to return to you. But we give ourselves permission to return back to this felt quality of being like we're in an ark. Safe. And it's a place in which, as we relax and release in our body, and we breathe a bit more deeply and calmly, it's like we're able to plug into this wellspring of chayut, of life force that we need. So that at the end, we'll ring a bell and we're better equipped to continue the mission of Avraham, witnessing the suffering of this world and responding with love. Let's go into the ark. In this ark, you have permission to smile. You have the permission to just feel the joy and spaciousness and goodness of one breath simply inhaled and exhaled with awareness.
Thank you, Jordan. I invite everybody to stick around. We'll have a chance to have a conversation and ask some questions and reflect. And in a moment, we'll have a chance to say Kaddish. If you need to leave us, we wish you would say T'chem Shalom, farewell, and hope you'll join us again tomorrow, same time, same channel. We'll have an opportunity now to say Kaddish. If you are holding someone in mind or heart today who you're remembering, please put their name in the chat. You can feel welcome to do that. And we'll also put the text of the Kaddish up on the screen. Jet will help us with that. There we go. And those who are reciting Kaddish, if you want to unmute, you can do that. And we'll have a chance to say it together. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Amma, Chayechon, Yomechon, V'chaye, B'chol Beit Yisrael, Ha'agala, V'zman Shmei Rabba Barach, Shabach, Mama Rabba Min Shmaya Shalom
Aleinu b'kol Israel v'ru amen. Aleinu b'kol Israel v'kol Yoshev Teve'inu amen.
Amen.
Thank you. So we'll bring Jordan back up here for a little debrief reflection. Thanks, Jordan. What your teaching made me think of a set that I recently did with a different teacher, Gil Fronsdal, who I like a lot. A recorded one, not in person. But where he was also, I think, similarly, and I think this is sort of what you were getting at too, is that a lot of times we approach our practice as a way of like calming down, right? Because we're in such an overstimulated, anxious world. And but that while that's important, that there's a way of thinking about our practice. It isn't necessarily just about calming down. It's about being able to be present with what's present and being able to respond sort of courageously. And that's not always necessarily about being calm and placid all the time, and sort of like escaping or letting go of whatever's there. And I've experienced that, I know, with my own practice lately. It's just like there's so much that's here. It's not possible for me to get to that place where it's just like, all totally calm and peaceful, whatever. Like what I've been doing, this is what I heard in your invitation. You can tell me if this resonates, is just to be able to get to a place where I can observe all the things that are going on, right? And not have to be pushed and pulled and buffeted by them. But like the storm's going to happen outside the ark. You don't stop the storm, right? It's being able to be present in the ark, right? That there is that ark to go to. That's what I've been finding. I wonder if that resonates for you, or if, curious about that.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. It definitely resonates with me. And I think part of what I'm finding in my own practice, just in my own life, is that, I think it's a Buddhist teaching that, it's foolish to think that every sick person needs the same medicine. And, sometimes I'm like tired and I need some coffee. And sometimes I'm too like wound up and I need to like go for a walk or whatever, like so sometimes to a significant degree, my practice is about trying to be really present to that, the movements of that sea that we sail in, and to be present with it and to try to remain, present with it and responsive. And sometimes I feel like in order to do that, I actually need to really like retreat into the arc.
Mhm.
And where there's it's like a more significant corrective that's needed. Sometimes I feel stable enough to like be present in chaotic seas, and sometimes I don't.
Mhm.
And I think especially in a time of extreme emotion and need to respond, um, I need to really like double down on that other side where I really do. Again, I need to retreat and take refuge in that arc temporarily, and then I know I'm going to come out of it, and then I'm able to be in that more stable place in the midst of those turbulent seas. That's how I think about it. So it's
Yeah.
most importantly, it's being sensitive to what's happening internally in the context in which we are living.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. There's a question here that it feels important to raise up. Lori has this question: what if the Ark on Shabbat is going to a synagogue, but with COVID and anti-Semitism, that Ark does not feel as safe to go into as it did in the past?
Yeah. Again, we have to be sensitive to um, the realities on the physical level, the physical plane, right? And if we're not feeling, if we're concerned about our physical safety, then for sure being in a place where we feel spiritually safe is even harder. So, in that case, I would just say I would really encourage people to like find places and ways that you can really cultivate that quality of taking refuge in an arc. And it might be like a walk or like sitting outside. Sometimes I find, honestly, for me, one of the biggest ways I access this is just being outside. And like, I live in a city, but to go outside and look at the trees, take a walk around the block. It doesn't need to be dramatic and like a, exotic camping trip or hike. That's great also. But to find these refuges in the midst of our lives, and a mindfulness practice is really ideal for that.
Mhm.
Even a short period, even a short sit. Um, yeah, I see watching the wind blow outside my windows, Lisa said. Yeah, absolutely. It's like if I can find a way to connect with beauty um, and goodness, um, that's really important right now. Um, yeah, I mean, I could say
Yeah.
more about it, but see, there's a lot of action in this chat. I'm
Yeah.
not
A
really
lot,
reading, I'm not able to really read it, but yeah.
going on there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then right, like it's really about, what I hear is a lot of questions about managing fear, right? And being real with what's going on and how to live with that. Um, and and someone else had chimed in here that, like, that in the course of the sit, just realizing how much fear they were actually experiencing. One thing I can say is, like, I think this community, obviously, right, has become really important for a lot of people, and I think that's significant. Um, and uh, and I think for me anyway, what I find has been helpful is just remembering that sort of the demand and the invitation is like okay, and how do I show up with courage, right? How where is that for me? And maybe that's not possible right now, but where is that for me? And what are other times that has happened? And I think about the enormous number of people who are taking way bigger risks than I am right now, and what kind of courage that they have to show, and where that comes from for them, including my own loved ones, and that we're capable, that we have a capacity for that, for courageous action. One of the things I was really struck by also was, I've been listening to a number of Israeli podcasts and watching my own family, how they've been talking. And one of the things that's very different that a lot of people have described in this current conflict from prior is like there's a generational shift now where, in openness, there's a real openness about talking about inner lives, in Israeli society, in the army, that people talking about their fears and their anxieties, and that's being welcomed as a very healthy thing. And it used to be, I think, for previous generations, it was like, well, it's not manly and whatever, grown men don't cry. And I think that's really shifted, in a very healthy way, potentially. And I think that can be a model for us also, to be present with our emotions and to be able to then, say, okay, and if we take seriously the notion, and Mark Margolius is fond of talking about from Rabbi Nachman, v'lo lahitpached klal, right? The essence is not to make ourselves more afraid.
Yeah.
Right. That's where our practice can really be helpful. So I don't know, those are some of my own.
Yeah. It really resonates with me. And, just maybe another way to think about this is like, remember as a kid, there would be like I don't know, some generalized in my mind sci-fi movie in the future where you have people in space and they're like, drink a shake that has all their nutrients in it, right? And they only need to drink that, right? Like we don't think about eating in that way, where you have to get like the shake that has everything you need in it right now. Like you have to drink that right now. But actually we know that over the course of a day, over the course of a week, like what are you eating should have all these different components and should support one's capacity for being in our lives in a way that we want to show up in that way. And so I feel like, this moment requires a different kind of fuel. I know it does for me as a human being. And my friend Oded sent a message earlier, like, quoting Kohelet, which was very much in my mind from that third parak of, if everything, there's a time for everything. And if this moment is a time of this war, and all that comes with that, then in this moment, what are the pieces that I can be actively cultivating in another way to help me be to show up in the ways I want to show up? And so I'm doubling down on my own spiritual practice, and also not just like my mindfulness seated meditation, that too, but really the again, I'm thinking of that metaphor that the Sfat Emet offers of the ark, where you like plug in to this source of chayut, this life force. And so like for me, that involves a lot of relational things. I've been reaching out to old friends, like actively trying to make plans with people who I like to be with. Definitely impacts how I show up with the people I live with, my kids, my wife, etc. And and even just like I'm drinking this chai. I put a little like extra honey in it. It's so good, and I love that. So like, are there ways you can just sweeten a little bit, not as a way of escaping, but as a way of of supporting the whole human being to thrive. And I need a bit more honey because there's like a lot of bitter, dark stuff. Yeah.
I would also say, I think for me, it's what's really been important too, is just really setting some limits and using the technological capacity that enforces those limits about your social media consumption. I don't
Oh,
know for everybody else here, but like, I think a lot of us have developed habits where, you go on your preferred, platform expecting to find something, right? Like there's like just this feeling of, well, something's going to be here that's going to, and it's often pretty mindless, at least in my experience. And then there's just all the toxicity that comes with that, and real sort of corrosiveness, and it lends itself to reactivity and to making reactive speech, and definitely not mindful speech. And you can listen, my podcast that came out this morning is about that, is like using the five questions associated with right speech as like a Shmirat Hadibur kind of practice, which I find for myself is really important. Just in, you talked about shlemut, is like experiencing that within myself, right? Shalom is not going to come without shlemut in each of us.
yeah.
Right. That's the prerequisite. And I think that for me anyway, something that I've really felt a strong sort of stirring the last couple of weeks is that in terms of our work at IJS is, I think, mindfulness is the foundational set of skills for peacefulness as a person and peacemaking as a possibility. And so that at least can start with myself. So yeah, there's just an invitation.
Yeah.
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 There's lots more we could say. Last word.
I just would say that this is a time of courage, and that I know also, like, I want to take my cue from Abraham of like rising with energy to bear witness. And my human heart cannot witness it all. And I just keep feeling that like feeling myself hitting the limits of what my human heart, my heart of flesh can hold. And it's very much connected to with what you just said, Josh, because there's also this I'd say holy desire to want to witness more. Like there's more information, there's more to learn, there's more I can do. There, like, and I want to affirm that comes from a good place, but I can't take it all. Like my heart can't handle it, and so I've cried a lot. I'm sure we all have, and I will continue to do that. And in order to sustain that, I also need to like take refuge in a beautiful, sweet, loving arc, so that I can keep doing it. So this resource is a great help for me, and I know for so many. Really grateful for this.
Well, thank you, Jordan. It's great to have you here. Thank you for sharing your Torah and your practice with us today. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And we will look forward to seeing you again tomorrow or whenever you can join us. See you soon. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Blessing.